Om asatoma sadgamaya, tamaso jyotirgamaya, mṛtyormā'mṛtaṃ gamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om asatoma sadgamaya, tamaso jyotirgamaya, mṛtyormā'mṛtaṃ gamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om asatoma sadgamaya, tamaso jyotirgamaya, mṛtyormā'mṛtaṃ gamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. Just allow that energy to sit with you for a moment quietly, noticing if your body energy is familiar with it already. There's a message there for you. There's an understanding, a wisdom that is much deeper than words, beyond physical experience. Do you feel the familiarity, the connection? And then bowing the head toward the heart, acknowledge that connection and draw the face to center. The Acetoma Mantra, sometimes called the peace mantra, the mantra, darkness to light, lead me. I'm just going to share my screen for a moment. There we go. And here we have, hopefully everybody can see, Acetoma sadgamaya, tamaso jyotirgamaya, mṛtyormā'mṛtaṃ gamaya. Ma means me. Asato means unreal. Sat means real. Gamaya, lead me away from the illusion of what is unreal to the reality. Tamaso jyotirgamaya, lead me from the illusions of darkness to the light. mṛtyormā'mṛtaṃ gamaya, lead me from the illusion of death to reality of immortality of the soul. This is such a beautiful, beautiful mantra. Om shanti shanti shanti. May there be peace in this physical body, peace in this mind, this subtle mind that I cannot see, cannot touch, but I know it's there because it's thinking, and peace throughout the universe. May there be peace everywhere and in all, with all things. Now, this mantra seems a very simple mantra on the face of it, but actually, it is the entire path of our spiritual practice. It is everything. Therefore, it is simple, but it is also complicated to our human minds. Because what does it mean? Lead me from the unreal, from the illusion of the unreal, to the reality. The moment that we step into that statement, knowingly, even a little knowingly, we are acknowledging that much of our worldview, much of how we see the world, how we understand the world, how we see ourselves, how we understand ourselves, how we see relationship, how we understand relationship, is false. It is not real. It is largely based on our experience of the past, our anticipation of the future, the fear and the excitement that surround the past and the future. Rarely is it based in what is happening now, in this moment. If we wish to experience life's reality, the sacred reality, the universal reality, then we need to cultivate the skills necessary to bring ourselves out of the past, draw back a bit from the future, bring our power back to our own heart, be present in the moment as it is, meet it where it is, without comparison, without dread, without doubt, without question. Simply be there. Cultivating the skills to overcome our traumas, to resolve them, not to just push them out of the way. We cannot just push them out of the way. That will create more issues, more suffering, more illusion. We need to work actively to resolve them, to be a participant in our own life, so that we can come into this present moment and be with what is happening now. That is the only way that we will address what is needed now and eventually surrender to the unity, to the connection, and to the essence of divine love. But you see, our hearts are stuck elsewhere. They're stuck in the deep past, the heartbreak, the fun, the joy, the hindsight. And our hearts are compelled, because of the past, to create some kind of future that resembles the past or that doesn't. And we tell ourselves, I am working toward that. I am working toward that. I am working toward that. And we can work toward that all we want to. But the reality is that we need to be that now. Do you want to be happy? Then be happy. No more excuses. Do you want to be peaceful? Then be peaceful. But I can't. My mind is constantly going crazy. That statement has many levels to it that need to be addressed. And the first level is to understand that the mind is a thinking device. It is always going to think. It is never going to stop thinking. It's what it does, and it does it beautifully. But that does not mean that the mind has to be the mechanism that steals the power of our peace from us. So we make a choice. We say, I recognize the mind is a thinker, but I'm going to start selectively paying attention to what it is saying. And when it is simply being redundant, or when it is being chaotic, or when it is being an instigator, I'm not going to feed it. I'm not going to give my power to it. Now, I'm not naive. I recognize that that in and of itself is a skill. And it is one that in my own life experience, I have worked very hard, and I have surrendered very deeply, if that's even a possibility for us, you know. And I'm still working, and so are you, and so are all of us. No one has it down. Not as long as we are in this human body, in this physical body. We will always be working, so we best get comfortable with that idea. We will always be working to regulate, to discern what the mind is doing and the value of that. But the more that we dedicate ourselves to that work, the easier it becomes. It is not pushing away the things that are uncomfortable. It is acknowledging the value that they had for us, acknowledging the harm that they brought to us or awakened within us. It is resolving our feelings over that. It is reclaiming our strength and our power. It is directing our power and our strength toward a new goal, the goal of self-realization. Now, what is self-realization? Lead me from the illusion of the unreal to what is real. The self is your wholeness. That is real. Rather than becoming caught in these ideas of, I am not good enough, I lack, I am a bad person, I am an angry person, I don't deserve, I do deserve. Instead of becoming caught up in such small statements, such little statements, that's like having the most amazing diamond in your hands, biggest diamond there ever was, with all these beautiful facets. And you're choosing to look at one tiny little flaw rather than the beauty of the entirety. When we talk about the real self, the true self, we're saying there is a wholeness. Don't get stuck in the flaw. Acknowledge the flaw for the benefit of a healthy, happy life. Acknowledge the flaw for the work that must be done to bring it to a place of healing, but do not get stuck there. That's not who you are. It's only one part of a greater whole. And when you back up from intense focus on that flaw to seeing the greater wholeness of yourself, then inevitably a few things will happen. You will begin to recognize what is not real. You will immerse yourself as if diving into a pool or an ocean, into what is real. It will awaken within you a freedom beyond imagination. Like the sun in the picture behind me, streaming through the beautiful trees. The sun is not caught in the flaw. It says, the shadows and shades of the light that radiates through these trees and through the dark of the forest is where the beauty resides. It sees the reality of the whole, not just the obstacle or the flaw. And in that, there is the gift of knowing a greater part of the self. Lead me from the illusion of the unreal to the real. The real, being with what is real, will heal you, body, mind, and soul. And it will also empower you to see that same process happening in every other human being, no matter where they are on their journey, what part of it they're experiencing, no matter how ignorant or awakened. Instead of seeing and comparing, you will simply see and respect, honor the difficulty of the path, because it is not easy for any of us. The second statement, lead me from the darkness, from the illusion of darkness to the light. The illusion of darkness, the darkness within the self, the darkness that appears to be within all others, the darkness of the world, the darkness of our circumstances, the darkness of our violence, the darkness of our lack of faith, the darkness of our hate, the darkness of harm. Lead me away from that. And bring me to the light. Let me see the rays of light permeating the darkness. Just a little bit. So that I can cultivate the faith in the existence of the light. You see, many people on the spiritual path, they say, they jump into the light, the concept of the light, yet they have no faith in it. It's a pretty idea. Say, oh, light is everywhere, oneness is everywhere, wholeness is everywhere. But they haven't cultivated any faith in it. And so as a result of that, they can stay in the fantasy for a little while, but inevitably somebody will say something. Somebody will look at them a certain way. Somebody will judge them or gossip about them. And suddenly the ego will come forward and it will begin to harm. It will compare. It will say, well, those people over there, they don't know. Who are they? Or it will begin to doubt. Maybe I'm not doing the right thing. And that is primarily, and then it will steal our power. And it will inject out into our heart, and then it will poison our path. And this happens because we didn't take the time, perhaps, or we did not allot enough time to really allow ourselves to cultivate the faith necessary to know that the light even exists. We're stuck in a state of fantasy. And that state of fantasy is in and of itself darkness. Because although the light exists, it is, to say so without knowing, feeling, surrendering, accepting the entirety, or at least some level, of its existence, is to misunderstand it, is to become delusional about it. And how do we avoid delusion? Well, we're humans. So at some point in our life, we're all a bit delusional. It's a mad comedy of sorts, you know. But through our own inquiry is how we minimize the fantasy and bring about a sincere practice, a sincere effort, a sincere experience. We become humble to it. And we say that forest in the back of me, the picture, I didn't put that there on purpose this morning, but now I'm seeing that it serves a very great purpose for this conversation, because at night, it would be a very scary place. In the darkness, you would be wondering to yourself what is lurking behind each tree. But as the sun rises and the light moves through the leaves, the reality of what brought fear comes with the light. That there is really nothing there to fear. There is only interplay of shadow and light, of perception and perception. And as the sun rises, you start to see the colors, the beautiful purple flowers and the greenery of the leaves, the brown of the tree trunks and the moss that's growing on them. And eventually what you see is beauty. And beauty is seen because of love, not because of fear. Now imagine for a moment a relationship that you have with someone, and all you see is the dark. There is no sun rising, not in your mind, and maybe not in theirs. And that's causing fear, dread, anger, hate, whatever it happens to be for you in a given moment. But now close your eyes and imagine, visualize, the sun is starting to rise, and the rays of that light permeating the darkness. Now there's an interplay of shadow and light, a dance. And every moment it becomes more and more clear. The only thing to fear is fear itself. As the light rises, the love increases, and the fear is dissolved into a recognition of radiance. And gently opening the eyes and feeling the truth of that. It truly is how we approach life in fantasy. We don't even know what we're afraid of half the time. Now, sometimes we do know what we're afraid of, and maybe we have some fear for a good reason, a fear of physical harm, mental harm, emotional harm. But there is a limit to the reality of that too, which is very complicated and goes far beyond this 1 hour talk. But for the sake of this conversation, let's acknowledge I am not talking about deep trauma here and the work that needs to be done around that, abusive relationships and the work that needs to be done around that. Or maybe I am, but it's at a different level of understanding. And so, and at a different level of self-healing and life adjustment. So just know that somewhere along the path, no matter where you are and what you are experiencing, either with yourself or with another person, this is possible for you. But the work that precedes it may be very intense. It may be very intense. When we're talking about abusive relationships, some of the work that comes before this may be to muster the strength to leave, to address, to get the support needed. And again, that's beyond the scope of this conversation right now. But just know that however we are seeing another person and however we are seeing ourselves is not the whole picture. It just isn't. We are only ever seeing part, a small flaw. Lead me from that darkness, the illusion that surrounds it, all the stories I've told myself about it, and how powerless I am in the face of it, to the light of knowing myself, of being myself, of embracing myself, and in doing so, embracing all others as well. I posted something a few days ago, which just really struck me in that moment as being the ultimate obstacle in the world right now. We are so busy trying to control others, trying to manipulate their beliefs and their lifestyles and the way they look and the way they feel and the way they vote and everything. We are so busy trying to control others that we have no time, no space, and no faith to serve God, to serve the goddess. Whether we see that as an entity or aspect outside of ourselves or within ourselves. We cannot serve two masters. So if we wish to be the master and have everyone be conducive to the way we see the world, then we don't have anything left to give to the master, because we're too busy being the master. And part of this moving from the illusion of darkness to the reality of the light is to say, I don't need to be the master. I just need to serve where I'm needed. To bow down in humility. To stand up where I'm needed. To be activated by love and unity and the end of suffering. That is to move toward light, toward the light of the whole self, the self that is of God and goddess, of goodness, the self that is unified. Now, some might say, well, we have to imagine, and imagine is fantasy. And yes, it is, but there's a difference. There's a difference between talking about this concept of light and then blaming the light or others for impeding the light. That is imposing a fantastical perspective upon something that in your mind and heart, you're just seeing as flawed. It's just all flawed. It's there, but I can't reach it. It's there, but I can't touch it. It's there, but I can't be it. It's there, but you keep stealing it. Versus the individual who acknowledges that the dark is actually part of the light. And inevitably, the light consumes everything. So I will not meet hate with hate. I will not meet violence with violence. I will not meet dread with dread. I will meet these things with love, with compassion, and with faith, that they too in time will be consumed by light. They will be changed, evolved, involved. Sometimes that love is loud. Sometimes it's soft and sweet. Sometimes that love is straightforward. Sometimes that love is not obvious to others. What matters most is what you know in your heart. And so we often will need to cultivate the skill to quiet the mind just enough, maybe to a loud whisper. I always laugh when I say quiet the mind because, she does not want to be quieted. Nope. But maybe we can get her to come to a loud whisper, just lower the decibel enough that we can hear the heart and abide by her teaching, by her messages. That's what matters. The judgment that others make of us, if you wear white or if you wear orange, or if you have purple hair, what does it matter what other people think? The person who is scorning you, has holes in their socks. Who cares? Who cares? These things are not important. They are certainly not important enough to take us off of our path, to move us away from knowingly participating in this journey. We can't really be taken off our path, I will correct myself. But we can move to ignorance of our path versus the knowledge of the wisdom of what it is that we are walking through. And then we come to the third statement, the third line. mṛtyormā'mṛtaṃ gamaya. Lead me from the illusion of death to the reality of immortality. Now, some might be saying, talk about fantasy. Immortality, what is that? Well, energy cannot be destroyed nor created. It can only be recycled. Our souls constantly recycled. The essence of ourself constantly recycled. Just as the wave comes forth from the ocean in a state of perceived individuation, it has no choice but to eventually return to the ocean, to become unknown as an individual and known as only the wholeness, as only the greater self. This is an age-old aphorism, an age-old expression of how to see the difference between who we think we are and who we really are. The limited self versus the whole self. The small self versus the greater self. Each of us are waves, fighting to express that individuality. And every wave will die. We don't like that idea because we want that wave to just go on forever, as if it were the ocean. And here's the dichotomy. It is the ocean, but it will only ever experience the wholeness of itself when it releases the egotistical draw to be separate. We don't have to physically die for that to happen, but we will all physically die. And at the physical death, is when the reality of the eternal ongoing nature of the self and the wholeness of the ocean becomes known to us, becomes the reality of the energy of us. The wave will never know that reality because it is too busy trying to elongate itself, make itself of optimal importance. It is only when we allow the moment to die, the circumstances to die, the hate to die, the comparisons to die. It is only when we overcome the fear of death that we begin to see glimpses of the immortality that all of this is built upon. Again, the picture behind me, the trees, they don't fear death. They just go back to the ground from which they came, and they rise up again. And they just have the cycle. Birth, life, death, birth, life, death, birth, life, death. The most beautiful dance there ever has been. Expression, expression, expression. Seed, sprout, grow, return to where you came. Some might feel that that is a scary prospect. But again, we don't have to physically die to experience parts of that whole truth. It comes with surrender. And so some of you might be thinking, well, I'm going to try to surrender then. I'm going to try to surrender all the time. Try not. Just do. I feel like Yoda there for a moment. Try not, just do. Because when we try, we're grasping. Cultivate a practice. And then die in the practice. For those of you who practice yoga asana, maybe this sounds familiar to you. You start your practice and teacher says, take warrior one. And you've come to a yoga class a few times and you know warrior one is a hard posture. It's difficult. And so you get yourself all ready to do the battle. You're going to stay there this time. That thigh is not going to hurt. You're going to make it happen. That's not surrender. You assume the form. You do the work of balancing what can be balanced. And then you merely have the experience without running away from it, without denying it, without putting a story around it of I can or I can't or I won't or I will or I'll make this happen. You acknowledge the difficulty and the ease, the darkness and the light, the unreal and the real. You acknowledge that there are parts of your story that need to die. They just do. They need to be put to rest now, so that other stories can rise up, because inevitably they will. But perhaps they'll be more of your heart's making rather than your mind's making. Perhaps they will hold a little bit more truth and a little bit less untruth. And perhaps surrendering to these little deaths that we experience day to day will cultivate within us the courage and the ability to meet the ultimate depth, understanding that it is no end at all. It is merely the beginning of the next chapter, the beginning of the chapter on wholeness, the beginning of the chapter on oneness, the beginning of what is beyond. It is our return to the ocean. And what a relief it is. I am not saying I do not have expectations. I certainly do. We all do. But in my past, I had many, many, many expectations. I had expectations way up here and then way down here and then way up here and then way down here. And oh my goodness, life is such a roller coaster ride. And through these practice of yoga, pranayama, meditation, concentration, asana, I learned how to rein in those expectations so that they weren't so wild like a horse who has not been broken, I suppose, who is still bouncing off the walls at the view of a bit, right? Instead of my expectations taking me on a wild ride, now I just look at them and say, okay, that's interesting. I recognize the limitations of that expectation. No expectation can carry the completeness of what the sacred has in store for us. Let me say that again. No expectation has the ability to carry within it all the potential of what the sacred has in store for us. It only limits it. It says, this, not this, just that. In the yoga tradition, we have a statement, neti neti, not that, not that, not that. None of that is whole enough to be the whole. It's all parts of it. So I will not get caught up in any part too much. Instead, I will remain open to the possibility. The last line of this mantra, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. We oftentimes translate Om, peace, peace, peace. But it is implied there that there are 3 levels to this. May there be peace in this physical body. May my physical body be peaceful. May my relationship with this physical body be peaceful. May I not hate on myself. May I not harm myself. May I not be violent with myself. May I not behave in ways that bring unrest to myself. For those who know a little bit about Ayurveda, may I behave in ways that balance my doshas. Bring peace to this physical body. The second piece, may there be peace in this mind. May there be peace in this mind. Some translations include that with the body. May my thoughts not be violent. May my thoughts not be chaotic. May my thoughts not be distracting. May they be peaceful and content. May I be content doing the hardest work of my life. May I be content in the most quiet of moments when there is nothing to do. May I be content, at peace. And the third piece, or for some the second, may there be peace throughout the world. May all others have that peace too. May we all know peace so that we can be peaceful together. And then some say, may there be peace throughout the universe. Peace in the realms that we know nothing about. Peace everywhere. So this beautiful mantra Om asatoma sadgamaya, tamaso jyotirgamaya, mṛtyormā'mṛtaṃ gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now I'm going to share my screen one more time. And just know that there is an Om at the beginning and an Om Shanti 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 at the end. And let's chant this a few times together. Om asatoma sadgamaya, tamaso jyotirgamaya, mṛtyormā'mṛtaṃ gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om asatoma sadgamaya, tamaso jyotirgamaya, mṛtyormā'mṛtaṃ gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om asatoma sadgamaya, tamaso jyotirgamaya, mṛtyormā'mṛtaṃ gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Keeping the eyes closed, let us sit silently for a few moments, simply absorbing the vibration of the mantra. And then gently opening the eyes. So as you can see, this mantra is not just a goal. It is a path. It is telling us everything we need to know. It is diagnosing us, and it is also giving us our medicine. And it is diagnostic, it is prescriptive, and it is telling us what to expect as a result. It is telling us the qualities that we need to cultivate in order to have the experience of peace, peace, peace. It is saying you must become wise about what is unreal, straightforward, no excuses, just be clear. It is telling us that we must become wise about the darkness. It is telling us that we must become wise about our perceptions of death. Great teacher of Buddhism, Nichiren Daishonin, he believed that awakening is only possible through education, through knowing. He said, you must study. You must. Your life must be seen through the eyes of a student. Everything you see, you must study and recognize the reality or the lie of it, the truth or the falseness of it, the light or the dark of it. And only when through education you come to know the difference is when you will be able to hold the space of your own reality. It is a huge space to hold. And it requires you to be clear. So my prayer for you and myself and the world at large is that we cultivate those skills. Is that we come into our spiritual practices deeply and mindfully. That we allow our compassionate nature to shine. that we recognize when we are caught in the loop, as my husband would say. And we say, no more loop. Nope, this does not serve. When we come into statements of, well, I'm going to get rid of what doesn't serve me, we oftentimes say that in an egotistical manner that actually means deleting people from our friends list on Facebook, right? But the reality is that when we say, I am no longer going to grasp onto what does not serve me, we're talking about our own behavior. We're not talking about anybody else. We're not talking about what other people do or don't do. We're talking about our own indulgent behavior. Maybe someone does have violent tendencies with their languaging, and they make us feel small about ourselves because that's how we receive those words. It is our willingness to receive and grasp those words that is the issue, not the other person necessarily. They have their own stuff they're dealing with, their own karma, they have their own battle. Can you imagine how small a person must be on the inside of themselves to harm another person? That is a battle. Leave them alone. Let them fight that battle. You have your own to fight. Stop grasping onto their words and their actions and simply take right action yourself. Do what you need to protect yourself, to love yourself, to see yourself in a light of wholeness. Live the life of oneness and be the light of goodness. So with that, it is 10:30. If you have questions, I welcome you to send them to me, or you can post them here in the chat, and I will type a little answer to them later today, perhaps. I'm grateful to each and every one of you for being here today. And again, our new schedule is here. Sunday mornings, chanting followed by Wisdom Circle. Monday evening online, Yin Yoga. Wednesday evening in person outside around the Agnihotra, the fire of the heart, Kirtan and Satsang. Saturday morning in person up on the second tier, basic yoga with Liz Mridani. I hope to see you either online or in person as your comfort level allows. So good to see you all. Let's sit tall, close the eyes, draw the hands together in front of the heart. And together we'll share one Om, one Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, and the Guru Mantra. Take a breath in for Om. Om. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Om Tat Sat. Be well. Enjoy the day.